And hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth session, Tuesday, the 18th of February. It's good to have you here. Our agenda tonight is pretty straightforward. Our guest speaker is Mr. John Bentley, a good friend of mine and becoming a good friend of some of yours from some of these weekends that you spent with him. He is the creator of and founder of Power to Transform Consulting. I know John has a lot of good information he's going to share with us, so please take good notes. We're also going to have two change model case study presentations, one from Jamille, one from Jena. And as we did last week, Jamille and Jena, talk amongst yourselves, decide who wants to go first, who wants to go second, and I'll go in whatever order you tell me. And then upcoming events, assignments, all those kinds of things. So without any further delay, let me tell you a little bit about our guest speaker. John is a pretty awesome fella. He and I go way, way back to our time serving together at the Senior Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. That's kind of an Air Force thing. And he has, since separating from the Air Force, he has definitely expanded his repertoire. He's a man of many, many talents. If you haven't already read his biography, I would encourage you to do so. It's part of the note taker. For those of you who didn't hear earlier, I did put the note taker. There's a link to the note taker in Canvas, as well as a link to John's handout. So, without any further ado, I am going to yield the presentation to my good friend John as soon as I can remember how to do it. Yes. Oh, there it is. Thank you. All right, my friend, you're on.
Yes, sir. Let me bring up my slides. And if you have the opportunity to have the handout with you, it will be helpful. If not, we'll work through this together. And also want to share with you that we've got 30 minutes. So everything that you see in the handout more than likely will not be covered tonight. But what I really want to help you do tonight is understand that the importance of leading the people side of change. And what I mean by that is how people transition individually, emotionally through what I call William Bridges' transition model that we shared. So tonight, our objectives are going to be pretty simple. We're going to look at change and transition and explore how perspectives impact your ability to deal effectively with external change and the internal chaos that it can create. And we also want to be able to recognize the need to work effectively during change rather than focus on just trying to make it stop. And the goal tonight is kind of expand the range of situations in which you can effectively function with change. And that was on page 2 of your handout. So let's kind of dive in now and define the difference between change and transition. But before I do that, that's one of my 6 mistakes a day that I allow myself. And if I don't use them all, I roll them over. I'll give you some sources here. You can see upper left is Managing Transitions from William Bridges. Then also the book From Chaos to Confidence from Dr. Susan Campbell. And then I was fortunate enough in 2007, as you can see, the 13-year younger version of me there, to write a chapter in Speaking of Success, and it was called The 5 Enablers of Success. And if you'd like me to send you that book chapter interview in a PDF, you can just email me and I'll be glad to do that. But I got to do that with Ken Blanchard, Jack Canfield, and of course, Mr. Stephen R. Covey. So here we go. Let's look at change and define it. I'm on page 3 here in the handout, if you've got it with you. And let's look at what change is. It's an external event, a situation that happens outside of us. I know we can all name a big one that occurred here a little over a year ago, or right about a year ago, and it was COVID. So others to think about, personal changes. There was a personal change when you decided to start your PhD program. The birth of a child is also personal, buying a house, and sometimes moving to another geographic location. And then professional, I'm sure we can think of quite a few, whether it being from new federal regulations, process improvements, mergers or downsizing, and even just, again, what's happening today in our world. So then what the heck is a transition? Well, here's the difference. It's internal, but I want you to look there. And if you got your book, you can write an underlined psychological process that happens how? Inside us, and it's how we respond and successfully adapt to the external change, So the big takeaway here is change is an external event that happens to us. How we respond to that change internally and emotionally is a psychological process, and it's an individual journey for each person, similar to going through grief, So let's take a look at Bridges' model here briefly. And what I want to point out to you with my cursor, you've got the ending the old, something that's changing due to the external event. You've got the neutral zone and the line to success. It's all over the place. It's never comfortable. Yet, if we don't work through it, we'll never get on to the new beginning. So if we look down here at the bottom, we see a few emotions, just a few, from comfort and the change hits, like COVID-19. And then all of a sudden, we start going through a range of emotions. But what happens is people tend to want to hang on to the old. And when they hang on to the old, there's a lot of discomfort, and they don't celebrate the loss that is happening. One of the things that I'm doing with a company I'm working for right now with COVID and them having to work from home and some people coming into the office and rotating shifts is let's celebrate the old of how we were doing business and what was good about that. But let's point out and brainstorm why that is no longer helpful in our current situation. So that's helping people learn to let go of the old and get into this uncertainty and look at the opportunities in order to find better ways of working in the current environment. So I'm going to go over now to page 4 of my handout. And it's set up for an activity, and you may not have the activity, but here's what I normally ask you to do. I normally ask you to start thinking of a personal or professional change that you just came out of or currently going through or maybe getting ready to go in. But what I'm going to ask you to do in the chat here in just a moment is I want you to write out a change that has impacted you within the last 18 months. But here's the kicker. I want you to use your non-dominant hand and only one finger to type that in the chat. That's right. If you're left-handed, you're going to use your right hand and one finger to type it in the chat. If you're right-handed, you're going to use your left hand to type it in the chat. Now I want to ask you, and I want you to think about that. Did you have an emotional reaction or a thought that this guy's crazy? I'm not doing that. Well, I'm going to try it, but it's tough. If you did, then that tells me that you started going through some range of emotions here, So let's talk about this one just a little bit more. As you can see, I've got quite a few more emotions there. And what I want you to think about, present endings, these are the emotions you would experience if you're going to stay in that zone of, well, this is uncomfortable, I don't want to do it, I'm going to fight it. It's all about security and control. Nope, it's not happening. But maybe you're saying, even though this is frustrating and it's not easy, I'm going to try it. I know it's not going to work out perfect. We're going to have some mistakes. We're going to take a couple of steps back, 4 or 5 steps forward. But if I do that, it's going to allow the creativity, us to harness the power of healthy conflict and be able to work through the stress to get into these new beginnings. So I'm going to use a very personal story here with you. And as you're listening, I want you to, again, think about a change that you might have experienced over the last 18 months. And as I'm sharing my story, I want you to determine which of these emotions are you or have you experienced. So I'm using a personal story of losing my daughter, my 28-year-old daughter, 10 years ago. Now you can imagine present endings, the death of a daughter. Was there shock? Absolutely. It happened. She had a health condition, but she was not expected to pass away. And I got the phone call approximately 13 hours after I just talked with her the night before on the phone call. Well, there was no denying it, but there was a lot of confusion and anxiety. And here's why. 4-year-old grandson, and the father's not really active or involved in the family. So now my grandson has to go live with his aunt, my biological daughter that's still living, and she has no children. So immediately her and her husband become parents. So do you think there were some endings for them? Absolutely. There was quite a few endings. But the idea being, we've got to work through those, get through the conflict where normal productivity is dropping, and then move on to the new beginnings. Now I'm going to stop there a minute, and what I want to do is quit sharing, and I want to see if we can have a quick conversation or some comments from you all, if I can figure out how to bring this screen back up. There it is. Now let's stop sharing. And what I want to ask you, and please come online or put it in chat, based on what I just shared, loss of a daughter, had a grandson there that now is living with an aunt who was having no children. What do you think was some of the things that they lost or that they needed to try to celebrate or learn to let go of based on the death of a daughter, the death of a sister, the death of a mom, and now a new family being formed instantaneously? What comes to mind? Help me out now.
This is Sandra. I think what really comes to mind first for me is and I'm sorry for the loss of your daughter, and I know it was a while ago, but the daughter and the son-in-law who took the 4-year-old in immediately, that shows me that they were very unselfish, and they had hearts that really had compassion and wanted to help, because I know of families, they don't do that.
Yes, ma'am. And if we go back and look at the model, and you look at confusion, frustration, uncertainty, now all of a sudden, how do I do this? And I'll share another thing with you. At that point, Krista, my daughter, my biological daughter, who now is Alex's mom, and Alex was adopted by her, was told she'd never have children. So right away, she's got to think about being a parent. What else do you think, as far as losses? You can think about me, you can think about them, you can think about Alex himself, even at 4, not being able to process it. What are some of the things going on in their mind?
Well, he was confused. I know he was confused. They were confused. Everybody's still in shock. And they're trying to figure out how all of this is going to work together, because when you don't have children and all of a sudden you do have children, that is epic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And from my standpoint, the loss is just processing that I'll no longer get to see my daughter again.
Yeah.
And how do I work through that grief? And what it boiled down to, for me to get through that neutral, not the neutral zone, but the ending zone, it boiled down to me, what is it that I can celebrate about my daughter's life?
Yes.
So I'm letting go of the physicality of the child, of the daughter, but I'm hanging on to, oh my goodness, look at the gifts she had. Look at what people posted on her Facebook page. So now I'm starting to be able to process that and work through that confusion of my role in helping my biological daughter, and also helping myself work through that and other family members. So there's been some great comments here. Don't leave a lot of time to grieve when you need to act. I agree with Kenneth, definitely a state of shock. Feed up comes before fired up. All right, so that wasn't with that, but that's okay. And then helpless. So when we think about that, all of you processed it from your own lens about how that would happen. And what I want you to take away, and I'm going to go back and share again. I'm going to go back here and share again. What I want you to take away from this is each person goes through this at a different pace. It's not the same for everyone. So while the change comes on us instantaneous, like COVID-19, workforce is having to adapt to dispersed workforce now, working outside of the business, or some working inside and some working outside and rotating. How is it that we get people to see where they are and help them recognize that if I stay stuck here, if I choose to stay here, there's a cost. There's a cost to me. There's a cost to my peers. There's a cost to the organization. But the more that I can accept and get into this neutral zone, that's where we start. If we have a learning and discovery mindset, that's where we get a chance to work through the conflict by finding conflict around the issues, not each other. That's where we get to talk about being stressed and how to support each other not being stressed. The company I'm consulting with, they literally stood up training classes on how to use Zoom, how to use Teams, different tools in order to be able to do their work. How are we going to access all these web-based tools that we use from work with these firewalls, and are they going to be protected when I'm using them at home? So it was important to have a learning and discovery mindset of not blame, but how is it that we're going to be able to do our job and everybody have input so that they can move into this hopeful and let go of the loss and accept the new way and get engaged and then become excited about it. And then guess what? We kind of got a normal working pattern, a new battle rhythm that is occurred after the loss that had happened. So here's what I'll share with you with my daughter. First of all, she recognized she was going to have to get some emotional support, not only for herself, but Alex, and also for her husband. They had to be able to work together and talk about things and do things they'd never done before. So they worked like that. They had the support of other family members, which was my son-in-law. His family was there to take care of Alex during the week instead of putting him in childcare, able to take him 2 miles to an aunt's house, and she took care of him while Krista worked and Kendall worked. So it didn't disrupt that. But Krista also had to be aware of a few other things. So I'll share with you, 3.5 years into it, Alex shut down completely. She could not get him to talk. And finally, one day she was able to win his confidence and basically shared, "Sweetheart, I'm going to love you no matter what you've got to share with me. This isn't about thinking you're wrong or there's something wrong with you. I really want to know." And here's what he asked her. And this, because he felt comfortable then and he asked her this, it flipped him working through, which he didn't know, getting through this part of the curve more into over here. And it was Nanny, because he called her Nanny at the time, even though she was an aunt. "Nanny, is it okay if I love you more than I love my real mom?" Wow, that come from a 7.5-year-old. And of course she said yes. Now here's the beauty behind it. Alex went from calling her Nanny and calling her husband Kendall, Uncle Kendall, to calling them Mom and Dad. And then wouldn't you know it, about right after that, Krista found out she was pregnant with twin boys. Now all of a sudden Alex is going to get to be a big brother. So he got hopeful. Krista and them were hopeful. Wow, we're going to be able to have our own children and our family is going to grow. So long story short, he's just turned 15, just got his driver's permit. He's making A's and B's in school. The twins are 7 years old. He loves taking care of them and helping, and they're just flourishing as a family. So I want you to think about the situation you're going through. Are you still hearing the endings? Or are you willing to get in this neutral zone, knowing it's going to be uncomfortable? It's not going to be easy. There's going to be some stress to it. So then you can work through and get into what I call a new way of doing business, so that it not only serves me better, it serves my teammates, our organization, and our customers. So here's what I want you to think about. Here's the big idea. Without a transition, change is just a rearrangement of the furniture. Unless transition happens, the changes won't work because it doesn't take. And I can share with you now, with my health and my weight, I am still not willing to get out of the endings. I want to hang on to my comfort. I want to hang on to be able to eat the food I love. So until I make up my mind to let go of that, work through that zone and get into that uncomfortableness, I'm going to stay stuck with the weight I'm at, with the blood pressure up a little bit, with high cholesterol. So I'll share with you what I did on the 14th of December. A friend of mine wanted to do a challenge. I said, well, if I can do it a personal one, I will. I'll give up soft drinks and sweet tea and cut out sugar. So I weighed myself today. I'm down 11 pounds. I have more energy. So now I'm getting more excited about making other changes, like cutting out what I really love, potatoes and pasta. But I'm going to do it. So here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about security and control approach. And you can see the little tagline at the bottom. What if we don't change anything at all and something magical just happens? Something magical just happens. So what the heck is security and control? Well, it's people with that mindset. Guess what they prefer? They prefer stability, and they work best when they can predict the outcomes of their efforts. Therefore, when change occurs, sometimes it creates uncertainty and a sense of loss. Moreover, they try to keep control by working to hang on to the current way of doing business and end up frustrated. So that's where, as leaders, we've got to help each other and the folks that we're influencing understand where they are emotionally, and is their behavior a payoff or a cost. And if you're staying stuck in that ending zone, there's going to be a cost. So I'll read to you now about a learning and discovery approach. And this is people who have a viewpoint that relate to the changing environment, and rather than trying to control it, they want to get more engaged and involved. And here's how they do it. They seek to understand what is required of them. Instead of focusing on their loss, they shift an attitude allows them to grow because they focus on what they will gain rather than what they will lose as they move throughout the process. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, and you can type it in the chat. I'll keep the screen up. But in that change that you identified, where do you see yourself? And put a check mark by the ones that are applicable. And if you come up with more in the security and control approach than you do in the learning and discovery, that may be a quick aha, saying, because I'm trying to hang on to what was, it's more painful for me, and I may not be able, I'm not helping people as much as I could. Or you may identify 2 and 2, it depends. But here's the idea. It's for you to choose which mindset am I coming from, and is the mindset I'm coming from a payoff or a cost? Is it helpful or hurtful? And again, I'll ask you to type some of that in. I'm being mindful of the time here. We're going to look at one more slide here, and it boils down to this learning and discovery approach. When the whole team bought into change, something magical happened. Something magical happened. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop there. Let's open it up for questions and answers so I can turn it back over to Dr. Kimmick here in a few minutes. All right. So I'm going to pause and get you to share with me either in chat or come on live on the camera. What are your takeaways about leading the people side of change and looking at it in terms of being an internal transition and people go through that process on an individual journey? Anybody?
I do. I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you in a non-threatening way help people see this information that you're presenting to help them make changes?
Yeah, and
not that I want to fix anybody, I'm not suggesting that, but just like, can you see how valuable this is? Can you see where it can help you? Like, how do you present that to people?
Well, I'll share with you what I did with my client recently. I presented the model, and then I had it printed out on like a 24 by 36 landscape. That last model I showed you with all the emotions. And I said, okay, on this change with this new system that you're going through, and oh, by the way, the inside office was making all the changes, but they really hadn't presented it to the folks working in the field that it impacted. You ever experience that? I just put the model on the wall and gave them all a dot. And I said, I don't want you to put initials on it, but I want you all to walk up there and put that dot on where you are in that model. And most of the folks working in the field were still in the ending zone. Most of the folks that were leading the change were in the neutral zone, a little bit into the new beginnings. And then I got them to discuss, okay, if we stay here, if this is our model, and if we stay here, how successful is your change going to be? And I got them discussing around that. And then that's when I went into the learning and discovery mindset. And what I can show you quickly, because I know we've only got a couple of minutes, I'll share my screen again, is I'm going to share a model with you called CUSP. And then we'll come back and answer a couple more questions. And oh, by the way, this is in the handout, so I won't be able to go into it deeply.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sir John, I just wanted to let you know that we're in pretty good shape. You've got about 9 minutes, so
okay,
fun.
John. All right. So what I'm going to share with you, if you have the handout, and if you don't, because I got this up as just a reminder, and in class I would have you in the handout. What I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to back up one slide here if I can figure out how to do that. Here we go. What I want you to do in this slide is I want you to read the 4 quadrants. And you can see I've got do it now, involve others, support others, and do it right. This is based off the DISC behavioral style. Just on a piece of paper, put a check mark, or mentally put a check mark on which quadrant you believe you would be in as far as looking at fears and under pressure. For me, I'm the involve others. So when a big change comes along, if I don't manage my fears, I sense I'm going to lose influence, and then I may be ignored, not be allowed to participate in making the change happen. And then what happens because of that, under pressure, I get very disorganized and I'm just trying different things to feel like I can gain some control. And then when I get into meetings, sometimes I take them over because I'm going to talk you to death because I think you're not listening to me because I'm being ignored. So that's how that impacts me. So I'll let some of you go ahead and look at that and ask you to type in chat or even speak up now. Where do you see yourself? Do it now, involve others, support others, or do it right. And again, I'd appreciate if some of you would speak up or either put it in chat, even though I can't see chat right now.
Well, I see myself in under do it the right style. The fears, loss of expertise, fear of being criticized, and under pressure is overwhelms others with logic, and that's me.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I end up doing.
So see, if I'm your leader and I don't recognize that, and I think it was Jena that asked the question, how do you help people see where they are in the model and own themselves and change themselves to get on board, is if I don't recognize that about you, I can't sit down and help you walk through this model of CUSP, which as you can see is control, understanding, purpose, and support. So what I would like to do, is it Miss Sandra?
Yes, it's Sandra.
All right, Sandra, I'm in my workbook right now, and I'm going to turn to page number 8. And I'm looking at do it right style, and I'm looking at some statements after control, understanding, support, and purpose. So what I would do is say, Sandra, I sense your frustration. What I would like to do, if you're okay with it, is let's read through these statements and get you to share with me your responses. So in our current change, and let's just say it's working at home and that's uncomfortable for you, Sandra. I'd want to help you find out what is expected of you in the new situation, so you're clear on that. And I also want you to learn how your situation will remain the same or change. So that's giving you you and I having a conversation of what will remain the same, which may give you some comfort, but also make you aware of what could change, so we can talk about what right might look like. Right. Which then leads us to understanding. So here's where we would talk about, and you would help me. We'd find out what new knowledge or skills that you may need to acquire, and where do you get the training? Because that's probably one of your thoughts. Would that be reasonable?
Yes. Oh, that is reasonable. Yes.
I'll say that. Now, how about support? What about support? We'd want to identify some short-term objectives and actively observe what is happening, and if necessary, develop temporary ways to get work done. Now, listen to this, accurately.
Yes.
Including working relationships. And then we'd want to exchange those observations and ideas with others who desire doing things right.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
And then last but not least, we want to create a purpose for you, because you may believe I've been doing everything right. And I'm the go-to person. I don't even know if I got a purpose anymore or not.
Right.
So what we'd want to do, we'd want to look at what needs to be done now to keep things moving in a precise manner.
Right.
Decide what issues you can do something about and which ones you can't. So what do you have control of? Yes. And then finally, plan to address the ones you can do something about and set the others aside.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Now, what I'm going to share with everybody, those statements were strictly for the do it right behavioral style. Do it right behavioral style. So there would be those same same headings: control, understanding, support, and purpose, but that the statements would read differently. And so I think it was Jena, when people see where they are and you give them this information to complete, now what we're going to do is get them to apply that to the learning and discovery mindset. So I'm going to share one more time, and I'm going to go to this last slide here. And then we're going to break it down. You know what? I've got it in your handbook. Never mind. Got it in your handbook. So I won't be able to share that right now. Close that out. So in the handout, what I've got for you, and I've just figured out how I might be able to do it. Here. It's not letting me share now for some reason. I know why. I closed her down. See, John, I talk out loud too. I think out loud when I'm doing this technological stuff. Yeah, it's not letting me share right now for some reason. So I've done something wrong probably. But what you'd want to do is you would want to take that learning and discovery statements like view changes naturally and fully participates. And what I would ask you to do, Sandra, is identify, does control help you do that? Does understanding help you do it? Support or purpose help you have that learning and discovery mindset with that statement? And then you would do the same thing for communicates to learn and share ideas. Which of the four would help you out of cusp? And it could be more than one.
Right.
Then how do you let go of old ways and aim for what can be done? Is it the control that you get based on getting the information answered from your statements? Is it purpose, etc.? And then finally, I want you to think in terms of possibilities. How will the cusp model help you do that? And then lastly, focus on what's right for the organization by living personal values. What about the cusp model would help you do that?
Right.
Now, I'd like some feedback from you on how you believe that would be beneficial for you if I was your leader or if you were leading someone similar to you.
Well, that would be extremely beneficial to me because first of all, it says that you absolutely care about what I'm dealing with when the change is happening. You know, I'm going through all these emotional issues also. And so it means a lot when the leader stops to actually talk to find out how people feel, you know, about what they're dealing with. And that would, like I said, that would help me greatly. It really would, because
Yes, ma'am.
it would because I'm a person who likes to know where I'm going. I don't like to be all over the place. And it frustrates me when the leaders cannot come to me and tell me we're going to do this, that, or that. And I have been in situations that have been horrific because the leaders never really got to know me. And I had a certain skill set that they didn't appreciate. So, oh yeah, I love to be informed. And
Yes, ma'am.
I'd love to know where I'm going.
Thank you, Ms. Sandra. Appreciate you engaging me there. Now, I believe, again, it was Ms. Jena that asked the question. Did what we discussed and go through help you with your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. But one epiphany that came to me was that, you know, people have to be in a certain emotional and intellectual intelligence level to understand that they have to transition and make changes. And if people aren't there, I think that this might not be easy for them.
Right, and that's where I love using the model to create those discussions and creating as much psychological safety as I can, where we're not here to blame you, we're not here to fault you, we're not here saying that this is going to fail. What I'm asking you to look at is if you're in this ending zone and the language I'm hearing, if you will agree with me, here's what I heard you say, that you're frustrated, that you really wish it wasn't happening. How will staying there benefit you and others? And that's where the personal values sometimes come in. And I love what you just said about social emotional. I attended a webinar today with a company, and 98% of the people agree it's worth their team's time to develop social and emotional skills, especially in the current state we're in. 9%, though, strongly agree that they know how to make it happen. So get that. 98% agree we need it, but only 9% know how to make it happen. So I love how you brought up emotional intelligence and recognizing that some people will be able to jump on board quicker when they see this, others still may resist. How much time we got, Dr. Kimmick?
My tomato just went off. So I think we're out. We're basically out of time. If you would like, we could probably entertain one more question, a quick one, and press on.
That'll work, sir. Be glad to. Anybody else got a question? And if not a question, maybe one person share with me. Miss Sandra has, Miss Jena's already shared something. What's one of your big takeaways from tonight? Got somebody typing here, it looks like. Well, Dr. Kimmick, looks like no questions, no other comments. I want to thank you for allowing me to share with everyone tonight. It's been a joy. And I look forward to being able to do it in the future if it works out with your schedule, sir.
Well, oh, always, always. And someone is typing. Let's just give this a few seconds and see what we have here. I'm seeing thank yous, getting in touch with my bounce back, thank you, those kinds of things. So I will tell you, the first time I was introduced to this presentation and the idea of William Bridges and transitions, and that all people progress at a different rate through those transitions. And then as a leader, you've got to deal with that and meet them where they're at. That's significant. So I look at that as a gift.
Amen, sir. And Carlos, I'm going to encourage you to, instead of say bounce back, let's call it bounce forward. Bounce forward, because if I'm bouncing back, I'm seeing myself going backwards. If I'm bouncing forward, I'm moving more toward what we want to accomplish. Yeah, I love that slide there, sir. That's awesome.
That was my mailman, or my mailbox snowman I told you about a little bit earlier, and that's how some people deal with change. I mean, you know, they're going through the initial impact of that transition. It's the screaming snowman all over again. So
I love it.
we have, and I think what you brought us is right on target and very important. Very important as change leaders in our organizations and in our lives. And you know, and it always goes back to the same thing. We can't manage or lead a change in others or to help others through it if we can't do it within and for ourselves. So just thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you too, sir. And if that's all you have, I'll sign off and let y'all get to it.
Yes, sir. Again, we'll do this again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time and
Thank
input
you.
tonight.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So he does such a good job all the time, and so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you your questions. Great job, everyone. I am going to ask you to take a 5-minute break, and that'll let our speakers pull themselves together and let us know who's on first, what's on second.
I'm going to go first, Dr. K. This is Jamille.
Jamille, very good. Okay, we'll do it that way. And you can show your own slides, or I can show them for you, whatever you want. But we'll deal with all that when we get back. In the meantime, go ahead and take 5.
Okay.
All righty, welcome back, everyone. So, you know how this rolls, right? There you go. Okay, discussion points about your change model and what your change plan is. Are you going to show your own slides?
I was going to let you do it.
You gonna let me do it? All right, I'm honored. Man. Wow, I got to see that again. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Whoa. All right, just do me a favor and tell me when next is next.
Will do.
Okay. All right, I'm going to mute my mic and my face, and yes, you are on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamille Hartfield, and the name of my presentation is From the Office to Home, Innovating New Hire Training in a Pandemic. So for me, whether it was personally, professionally, or academically, as we all have experienced, we all have been affected by the coronavirus and the pandemic. My organization went from situational telework, which was very rare, and we found it very funny how we quickly transitioned to 100% telework in a short amount of time. And everyone was pretty shocked about it since they had been begging for it since way before I joined the organization. And when the pandemic occurred, they kind of had no choice to put us to 100% telework at the time. But it was just funny to see how quickly everything worked out when we couldn't telework at all, really. But although our organization was going through such an impactful change, as well as throughout the world, surprisingly, hiring was not on hold. So a pandemic, don't panic. My organization said, let's innovate. Dr. K, you can go to the next slide. So, the change issue and the facts. The organizational change issue for me is the transition of virtually training new hires versus the face-to-face training we were used to having. In the midst of the pandemic, I was internally brought on board to a new team, which came with new duties, new responsibilities, new tasks, and of course, new assignments that I had no knowledge of. These methods included a new form of communication, which we're using right now, Microsoft Teams. And also we've been implementing other webinar platforms. I kind of had an advantage over everyone with the Microsoft Teams since USM was so grateful to let us use this platform. I was one of the ones who already knew what I was doing versus everyone having to learn and play catch up. Upper management met with our head of information technology, our IT guy, but they had a meeting and wanted him to assist with the transition for the organization. And it's very, very crazy, but for us to have a building with close to 200 people, we only have one IT person in the entire organization. So you can imagine all of the problems we've had within our organization where everyone has dual monitors as well as a laptop. And we only have one IT guy. And most of the time he liked to hide out in his cubicle until you had to literally search to come find him. So that was definitely a big change for him as well. Upper management then requested all employees within our organization to download Microsoft Teams through an email link. They wanted all of us to participate in a virtual training to learn how to navigate the system and implement the platform in training and within our team communication. Because frankly, when you're face-to-face, oftentimes we had weekly team meetings and all hands meetings that involved the entire organization. So it's quite different to keep everyone updated from their homes. A major challenge within this change was the generational gap and unwillingness to change, as Dr. McDonald spoke about within our last session. As Dr. K asked within our last session, employees want to know what's in it for me. The WIIFM, I think Dr. K said that's our favorite radio station, but many couldn't find the answer. And that frankly ran into or forced retirement and turnover. So a lot of employees found that retirement was more beneficial for them than accepting this change of working from home, having to learn new systems, and just doing something different than they had been used to doing. Turnover rates intensified the problem because not only did we have new hires coming on board, aka me and a few other people, the organization had to shift and compensate for the retirement of supervisors as well as other leaders and employees who took out the time to find other jobs within different organizations. The day I was brought on board to my team, ironically, was the exact same day that my new supervisor was retiring. So it was a bit chaotic. I didn't know who I was supposed to report to. I didn't know who I was supposed to call. It was just, I was already nervous about joining a new team and finding out that she was retiring. I'm like, okay, well, she probably doesn't want to deal with me today because she's ready to get out. But she made me feel very comfortable, and I was very grateful that even on the last day of her job within the organization, she took out time to call, check up on me, and notify me about some upcoming changes. I'm sure you can imagine all the chaos with her filling out her exiting forms, and you're trying to bring in new members of your team while you're trying to leave. Like I said, she did a wonderful job of explaining everything, and she in fact told me about the new training methods that were proposed and would be enforced. But in reality, the new hires weren't the only ones who were going to be learning. The entire organization had to learn. Management had to learn new ways, how to lead. Supervisors and mentors had to learn new ways to teach, and new hires had to learn a new way to learn. The learning process is challenging, but I will use Connor's 8 stages of commitment to plan the change in training, mentoring, and communicating to adapt to our new work environments, our homes. This change model will be essential to changing the negative perception of new methods and technology and create a more positive work environment, even from the comfort of our own homes. From my experience, the work environment, even from my own home, has been quite different, challenging, and just communication-wise, surprisingly, it's been more negative. I picked this model because my organization had made similar steps, but it wasn't as successful. And I found that this commitment model could change the way we approached new modernizations within our organization. Daryl Connor invented the 8 stages of building commitment in the early 1980s. He developed this method to describe how and when people become committed to new organizational changes. If you're like me, when I see charts, I'm a very simplistic girl. So when I see a lot of lines, I'm just like, whoa, what is all this? So after reading everything, Connor did a wonderful job of breaking everything down. So I'm going to break everything down to explain to you all. So the vertical axis that you see on the left-hand side is the degree of support for the change. The horizontal axis at the bottom represents the passage of time. Throughout the 8 stages are 3 phases: preparation, acceptance, and commitment. As Dr. McDonald reflected. She said, Dr. A usually says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So the preparation phase, of course, starts before any of the stages are implemented. This is the foundation to build support or resistance to the upcoming change. The stages of commitment begin with contact. This is the first encounter people have with the fact that change is about to take place. This can bring awareness or unawareness. Hopefully, going into the next step, that will bring the awareness. If awareness of change occurs, this means that people realize that the new adjustments have actually affected them. This could create confusion or understanding, as you see the arrows pointing down within the chart. Before you get to the next stage of understanding or acceptance, the acceptance phase occurs. This is a critical milestone where the vision of change takes a shift and engagement begins to occur. After people accept the change, they begin to understand and begin to comprehend the change. This can be perceived more positively or negatively. Do people want to support the change or not? From my experience within my organization so far, because of the approach my organization took, people took this more negatively with the communication part. Of course, people were thankful that they could work from their homes, but changing their way of doing things from not coming into the office and being face-to-face and actually having to learn about new technology, they have been more negative about it. And I think that, like I said before, that's with the generational gap. Next, you have positive perception. Positive perception is important to build commitment. According to Connor, to reach true commitment, people must begin to try out the new way of operating. They must alter their mindset and their behavior. And frankly, that's a choice. This goes into the commitment phase. This is the passage over the action threshold. Commitment occurs when people see a change as more positive than negative and take action accordingly. This flows into experimentation. This is to test the change. This is the first time people experience and try the change. How will this affect their normal routine? Will people adopt or reject the change? If adoption is achieved after individuals have successfully maneuvered through the trial period, according to Connor, the differences between experimentation and adoption stages are important. Even though their dynamics are similar, experimentation focuses on initial entry problems and adoption centers on in-depth, longer problems. An organization can decide to institutionalize or terminate the change. Although we've been receiving a lot more negative feedback, they still haven't decided to terminate the change because frankly, we need it. They don't have a plan B. Institutionalization reflects the highest level of commitment, and internalization can only be achieved by individuals who make a personal choice. This personal choice is challenging, well, way more challenging than I expected it to be. You just have to choose to change. It seems very simple, but it's so complex at the same time. And I related my organization to Dr. McDonald from our last session when I asked her about, has she had an experience where the top level of the triangle had accepted the change and she couldn't get the bottom half to accept. And that was the same thing that my organization is currently going through. All of our upper level management, our directors, executive directors, people from our headquarters in Washington, everyone's on board, all the way down till you get to the level playing field of employees. And like I stated earlier, that's more of a generational gap. You have some more seasoned who aren't used to using this much technology. I kind of always relate it back to my family. It's just some kind of phobia when it comes to new technology and new things. And once it's simplified and communicated, then people are more accepting of it. But when it's just given to them, you have to learn this, and it's more of in a do or die type of situation, people aren't as receptive of that. And I've definitely taken that note within my organization. So here is how I plan to change that. You can go to the next slide, Dr. K. So the new plan for me with implementing these 8 stages, first of all, contacting the employees. My organization did do a good job with contacting us, but sometimes it felt like we were kind of out of the loop. It was just, we weren't initially involved within those first conversations. It was just like, okay, well, here's the change. This is what we're going to do. And we weren't quite involved within the decision. So for me, contacting and informing all of the employees of the upcoming change in a more open and more enthusiastic approach, that will be my first step. Secondly, with the awareness of change, following up with employees for understanding and adding in that open dialogue. For us, like I stated before, we weren't involved within the first step process. They did do a good job of contacting us, but following up to see if everyone understood how to use the new system, I feel like that would make way more of a welcome and involve our employees and make them feel a little bit more comfortable to make sure everyone understands. That way they can comprehend. So following up with the employees to understand and just having that open dialogue and checking in. Is this system okay for you? What challenges are you having? Is it internet connection, or are you just not able to navigate through it properly? I feel like that would be a way better approach. And we could do this through smaller focus groups, whether that's through a free conference call on the phone. I know most of our organizations more open to the conference calls on the phone because we have had all hands calls. So just calling and checking in within small groups, because I did notice that people are more willing to vent and explain and let you know if they can't understand something if it's in a smaller group. I wouldn't feel comfortable just telling my director on a line full of 200 plus people, hey, I don't understand this, because you just don't know how that conversation is going to go. So if it was someone with my team lead or my supervisor contacting just within our team, I would feel more comfortable with having that open dialogue and letting them be aware of my status of the change. Understanding the change, I would like to change and recognize the negative perception. I think within my organization, originally, the negative perception was kind of just skipped over and, okay, it's just what y'all think, but this is what we're going to do type situation. So actually recognizing and bringing that negative perception to the light can connect with a greater cause within our organization. Next, within the positive perception stage, I would like to involve the employees within the updates of the new system and make it more personal. Like I said, we weren't involved in the beginning stages. It was just presented to us, and this is this, download it, make sure you do your updates, and that's it. But I feel like when our upper level management receives new information about the upcoming system, or if there's just simply a change in plans, it would be nice to let the organization know so that the employees feel a deeper connection within the organization and they just don't feel like they're just simply employees. Experimentation, involving the employees within the demonstrations and the tests. Frankly, initially, they involve maybe like the supervisors or just the director and the deputy director within these updates. Like I said, it was just presented to us and this is it. So I feel like if we had more demonstrations, more live demonstrations or tests, that would help the employees kind of change their perspective about the system instead of having to just figure it out on their own. Adoption. Does this change fit with who we are as an organization? This is what Connor brought to light within adoption. Initially, it didn't fit. My organization is just kind of old school. They're not very innovative compared to other organizations that I have visited, and it just didn't fit at first. But within these new stage, with this new approach, after implementing and involving the employees more, I believe that the adoption of the change would fit into our organization and within our culture. Institutionalized, I would implement rewards as well as disciplinary actions. Connor found that this would help make a deeper connection with the employees because based off my experience with a few of the employees, if there aren't any disciplinary actions taken for not using the system, then they're not going to take out the time to learn about the system. They don't see how it can negatively affect them, except for later on down the road when we're on a team call and they're not able to log on because they haven't been using the system. So that's when it starts to show. But if you begin to implement rewards, just being more involved, and like I said, forming that deeper connection within the organization and with the employees, I feel like that would help institutionalize the system. Like, this is what we're doing. You need to learn how to use it and make the effort and make a choice to use it, or disciplinary actions will be enforced. And for those who have been taking out their spare time to talk to people, some of the younger employees probably wouldn't mind speaking with some of the seasoned employees and just helping them. I feel like management implementing those rewards would help the employees feel seen even from their own homes. And internalization, just having a more enthusiastic approach makes a huge difference. Enthusiastically adopting the system as a part of our organization's culture would just make a total shift. Just that last one by itself can make a huge difference within our organization, because I hear comments all the time, oh, well, we're not used to this, but this is where we are, the pandemic, this is what we're going to do. I know y'all aren't used to it, but just simply changing the language of adopting a new change could make a huge difference within an organization. And just implementing this new plan, I feel like that it would make a huge difference within my organization and just change the vision and perception and create a positive perception of teleworking from home and using our new innovation within this pandemic. And next slide will be my references. And does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Okay, let's get some questions out there. I'm sure I'm pretty excited. I thought that was a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jamille. Well done.
Hi, Jamille. This is Sandra. That was a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Look, the last part of your presentation, you were talking about the resistance to change and disciplinary action.
Yes.
So how much, well, I don't know if you would know how much disciplinary action has been given out, but normally, because there are so many people who've been there for such a long time and they hate changes, they absolutely hate them.
Yes.
The younger crowd is like, yeah, hey, we're used to technology. Let me jump on board. And the senior crowd is like, I don't want to do that. I'm scared. Normally, it's just fear.
Yes.
It really is fear. So how is your organization dealing with that part of the process? Because in my organization, it was very difficult to fire people who didn't want to change or to gently lead them into retirement. So
Yeah.
what are you all doing right now with that issue?
Honestly, they're still just rolling with the punches. The people who have that option to retire, they have retired.
Okay.
I have noticed more people searching for other job opportunities. So I have noticed that just people just searching for another job. But honestly, you really can't run away from the innovation. I mean, it's everywhere. So whether they go to a new organization, but I do understand if they want to go to a new organization due to a different culture.
Right.
Because our work environment and our work culture can be pretty intense and a bit intimidating, honestly. So I do understand when people want to search for another job due to changing the work environment. But yeah, if they have that retirement option, they've taken it. For those who are still fighting against the change, they kind of have no choice but to implement it now, because now our organization is just using it nonstop. So they have no choice but to learn how. I kind of experienced that with one of my team mentors. He was just, oh, I'm not going to download this stuff. I'm not going to refresh my computer. And now it's like, okay, when we have trainings or team meetings, you have to get on Teams. And so now he's kind of softening his shell, and he has to use the system to train me. So now I have to train him on how to train me. So that's been a shift.
So, because at some point, and I'm done after I say this, at some point, a corrective action, that we used to call it, a disciplinary action, sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, it is.
Fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jamille.
Hey, yes.
Question. What are you doing to, or what have you implemented to gain buy-in or influence with just a regular person? They may not be here or there on conforming to the new ways, but are you guys doing anything to accommodate or influence your teammates or other teammates to gain or go forward with the change?
Yes, within our organization, once they kind of realized it was a bigger situation than what they imagined, it was affecting people a lot differently than what they thought. They did start checking in a little bit more. So that was a little bit helpful for those who are open to it. They they accepted it and just started, changing and implementing the system. But for some, they just stubborn until you basically have to force them to get to that point. But just checking in more in between meetings to make sure everyone is doing what they can, making sure they're updating their system, sending out little emails here and there about Microsoft Teams. That's been quite helpful too, to kind of help with the buy-in. So that more aggressive approach wasn't working. So they kind of noticed that. So now it's kind of more of a softer, more welcoming approach to it.
Who would you say is your biggest ally to help? What I've learned in the past is all battles are not mine, and I can't fight when there's change coming. So I had to for me, I have to find who's the person that has the influence or the ally that will, kind of stand in front of the bus for me.
Yes.
In a sense, have you identified who that person or those people are that you can kind of say, hey, I need y'all to help me with with the superintendent over here that won't,
Yeah, as far as allies, my supervisor now, well, technically he's not my supervisor, but since my official supervisor retired, they have another supervisor supervising 2 teams right now. So he's my temporary supervisor. He has been my ally currently, as well as my team lead. They've been doing a very good job within our team implementing the system and making sure everyone's comfortable and just checking in before a meeting to see if everyone's able to get on. Just those little things have been very helpful. So, for example, if we have a training coming up and the training starts at 10 o'clock or 1000 if you're on military time, my supervisor would send an email about that. He'll send the link out with everything that's going to be presented within the training. And he'll say, hey, I'll be on at 9 o'clock for those of you who are having trouble so we can get those technical issues out before the actual training starts. So I noticed that's been very helpful for people who aren't used to the system. So that gives them more time and it gives them a sense of comfortability that they have an ally. So, okay, so I don't feel embarrassed if I'm coming onto the meeting late because my system's not working, Microsoft Teams is shutting down. So just implementing those little things have been very helpful. Kim, I think I saw your hand up. My screen's kind of froze. I can't see anyone right now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's like my mute is backwards.
Let's see, did we lose her?
Me?
We can
Hello?
we can hear you now.
Okay. Basically, I was wondering, so the people that you said retired or, the ones that decided to jump off the ship, sometimes I guess if you're the one who's facilitating the change, you sort of feel like, did we fail them? Did the system fail them? Is it that the system wasn't easy enough for them? Could I have done more? Do you get the feeling that the system failed them, or for the majority of them, do you feel like, they were just sort of, I guess, throwing a tantrum? And it's sort of an ego thing, like, if I can't have it my way, then I'm just gonna leave and I'm gonna show them type thing. How do you gauge that?
Honestly, I just think that was their ticket out. Like, and then honestly, I don't think the organization was complaining because some of them were just holding on to that retirement. And it was kind of time for them to for new blood to come in. So I don't think they took it as a tantrum or they were just mad. I just think they just saw like, okay, this is my ticket out. I don't have to go through this. It's time for my retirement. So I don't think they threw a tantrum about it. I just think they saw, okay, this is my sign. It's time for me to retire. So.
All right. Let's give Jamille a big hand. Great job. Great questions. Thank you. This is where awesomeness lives here. All right, guys. I think we have time for a quick break, so let's take 5. When we come back, Jena will do her thing, and we'll roll into our upcoming events, etc., and then we'll be out of here. So see you in a little bit. Well, I'm guessing, yes, most of us should be back, right? How are we looking?
Dr. Kamick,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to do my own. And so I'm going to click this little box with the arrow and say share my content. Is that right? And then I can pull up my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, should I do that now or wait? Because
No,
like
now.
once I do that, all I can see is my PowerPoint. So I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, pull it up, and we'll tell you if we can see it.
Okay. And then, I mean, can you see that?
I can.
Okay. But when I go into my presentation mode, like that's all I can see.
Yeah, there's something going on there. So.
Oh, I have my closed captioning on. Is that going to bother people?
It won't bother me.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, I have severe performance anxiety, so.
Oh no, no worries. The fun thing here is I just don't understand. Let's see, hide share options. Oh, there they go. Okay, now I can see. How about you? I think we're good here. You're going to do a great job. Okay, so let's do this thing. You got this.
All right. Am I going to start now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hello everyone. My change model case study titled COVID Classroom Policies and Procedures is developed around Pasmore's complex continuous change model. I am Jena Hartley, a second grade school teacher at a school in South Mississippi. Since the beginning of the school year, my classroom and only one other down my hall has been COVID-free, even though we have been in close contact with infected students. I believe in part this is due to spending countless hours cleaning and sanitizing our rooms. So I am presenting an opportunity to improve my organization, which will include making changes to the current policies and procedures when encountering exposure to COVID during the school day. Also, these changes will include steps for quarantining students. Again, this change initiative is examined through the lens of Bill Pasmore's Leading Complex Continuous Change. Now let's examine the change issue further. As I previously stated, most teachers spend a great deal of time sanitizing their rooms daily. This regimen includes sanitizing surfaces in the morning before students arrive, between the use of shared resources, before and after food service, and after they leave for the day. You might be asking yourself, when are we supposed to fit in teaching? Well, that's a whole nother issue to examine at another time. Currently and unofficially, it is the teacher's responsibility to sanitize their classrooms after receiving news of confirmed cases and when we've been in close contact with exposure to COVID. I want to take just a minute to describe a firsthand account of the issue, but also this isn't just my issue. It is a common occurrence in other classrooms down our hall. I can't really say it's for the whole school because I don't get around the whole school. Our day is so full. But over a 3-day period, I was in close contact with a student who was later diagnosed with COVID. And her parents had COVID, but kept sending her to school because she did not exhibit any of the common symptoms. However, I knew she wasn't feeling well, so I kept her at my table beside me and away from other students. I could not convince the school or her parents she was not acting like herself and that there was something wrong. It took me 3 days for them to listen. And this time was so stressful because not only was my student suffering, but I had a responsibility to keep all the other students safe, and I felt helpless to safeguard anyone. So I was responsible for quarantining her in my room with 22 people, sanitizing my room, and still teaching for 3 days. During this time, I advocated for a change in procedures and policies and was told everyone followed procedures. I reasoned with the principal, the school nurse, and counselor that policies and procedures must be revisited when we know they're not working. I propose there is a safer and more responsible approach to take. Presently, the administration and staff follow the current policies and procedures in place, except for one part, to sanitize the rooms with COVID certified staff. Again, I stress the crucial importance of revisiting policies and procedures that are not fully effective. So now on to the facts of the case study. My school has approximately 500 students and 60 faculty and staff members. According to the school district's numbers that they have reported for COVID cases as of February 5th, 2021, over 40% of our teachers in my school have contracted COVID, which lands us in third place for the highest number of cases reported in the district. On the upside, only 5% of our students are reported to have contracted COVID. So for me, that shows how hard the teachers are working to keep their classrooms safe for their students, but places them at a high risk of encountering and contracting COVID and other highly infectious diseases. I have to note that teachers have not been trained or certified on properly sanitizing our rooms to limit the spread of infectious diseases, nor am I proposing that we get trained. I do not know of a teacher who does not consider their student safety their #1 priority, but teachers cannot be the first and last defense to keep the classrooms healthy and safe from germs. According to the school district's reopening resource guide, all spaces will be cleaned with COVID-19 certified custodial staff. This speaker assumes that all the custodial staff is indeed COVID-19 certified. However, I can verify and attest that not one class down my hallway has been sanitized at any time other than what individual teachers and night custodians have done. Another interesting point is that the state of Mississippi Department of Health reports that schools are following the CDC guidelines. In contrast, however, local school officials have stated that CDC guidelines are not mandates and therefore optional. Essentially, several small change initiatives need to happen in tandem with the overall vision to update policies and procedures for managing active COVID cases in school. I will explain the change model proposed further in the presentation using Pasmore's complex continuous change model. During this change initiatives, the improvements made are designed to protect the students and teachers by minimizing the spread of COVID and other infectious diseases. It is essential to make these changes happen to create a safe and healthy environment for students and staffs. Daily, teachers clean and take health-conscious measures to keep their room clean and safe for students. However, there's an opportunity to do more to help the spread of a highly infectious disease. Additional assistance is needed to ensure classrooms are professionally sanitized and cleaned upon confirmation of contamination due to COVID. This model is a simplified version of Pasmore's highly interactive and detailed complex continuous change model. This is my own creation, and I tried to simplify it because it is a very complex model. But this model is comprised of 4 main actions. And before we get started, an important aspect to consider as we go through this change model is that you will move back and forth between these actions depending on conditions encountered during the change process. It's not a one direction model. The first phase in complex continuous change is called the discovering phase. The objectives of discovering are to identify viable options which lead to visions and finally revise as needed. The mindset here is to think fewer. Choose the most vital change initiatives and draft the vision with input from the stakeholders. During the discovering phase, only a few of the most innovative ideas should be explored. Chosen change ideas or initiatives may require further examination. These actions then move the initiative to the next phase, or it stays and this action is repeated until final revisions are made. With the change initiative chosen, we can move into the deciding phase. During the deciding phase, change teams assess needs, timings, and costs. This means we are determining the change initiative scope. We're reassessing the timing and we're creating a budget. In other words, the questions we are asking here are, what do we need to do to get where we want to go? The mindset here is to think scarcer. Pick the most critical change initiatives and limit them to the most vital choices. It is crucial to consider the potential and likely disruptions to other systems within the organization during this stage. Assign responsibilities to the change team lead members and provide needed resources to get to work. Now on to the doing phase. This is where the action happens. The previous steps were formulating, training, and preparing. Now we are at the starting line where changes are set into motion. The organizational objectives in this phase are engaging and executing the change strategy. Action in this phase includes essential training for employees and opening communication lines between employees, change managers, and leaders. Another vital component in this phase is to pilot the change initiative. Piloting is when the barriers and challenges are brought to the forefront and the change team can modify and revise the change initiatives accordingly. Communication is the most valuable resource to ensure the best results. Employee engagement and town hall-like meetings help change leaders understand the response to the issues and allow another stopping point to determine if the change initiative needs revisiting in the deciding or discovering phase, and whether or not it moves on and gets rolled out. So the mindset here is to think faster. Thinking faster means we need to quickly decide if changes are on course, or is it time to reevaluate, make improvements, and move forward? Alternatively, back up and retreat to the deciding phase to revisit the change initiative's chosen strategies. Next is the discerning phase, and the objectives for this phase include learning from experience, improving and increasing our change capacity over time. In other words, with constructive reflection methods, we can get better at complex continuous change by examining change initiatives and their effectiveness. This action allows us to refine our change methods, increasing our chances for success in future change initiatives. The mindset here is to think smarter. This is where Pasmore recommends we stop and slow down to speed up. We review overall outcomes and choose if the change initiative is going too fast, too slow, or not in the direction the stakeholders and leaders intended. So now I will talk about how I'm going to implement, or I would like to implement my change initiative into Pasmore's model. The first action outlined in Pasmore's complex continuous change model is to discover opportunities for change. During the discovery phase, I identified that the vision is to update the policies and procedures for managing active COVID cases and sanitizing classrooms to mirror the guidelines outlined by the Mississippi State Department of Health and CDC guidelines. The stakeholders should consider making the policies and procedures written, uniform, and consistent with CDC guidelines and Mississippi State Department of Health. Stakeholders currently take the position that these are guidelines and not mandates, therefore implemented only some of the recommendations. They have provided us with a cleaning agent, although on a side note, I have no idea what it is because it comes to us in an unlabeled spray bottle. This too is neglectful and against safety guidelines. And we have access to use a fogger to sanitize our own rooms with this same unknown chemical agent. The principal calls halt. The Mississippi State Department of Health recommends that exposure to COVID-19 within close quarters, such as living with someone, should quarantine for 14 days, but provides a 10-day option if there have been no symptoms. The CDC recommendations are the same and request individuals in close contact with someone with the virus to quarantine for 10 days. If the school policy followed these guidelines, it would have meant that my student who came to school after active exposure would have been sent home for the quarantine period, protecting the rest of us in the room. The new policy would align the school district with the Mississippi State Department of Health and the CDC recommendations. Then the team of change leaders would present the information into simple procedures everyone can follow. During the deciding phase, making changes to the policies and procedures stems from my research and personal experience. According to the school district's reopening resource guide dated August 5th, which I have to note was before school opened, has no public updates or changes to procedures since the reopening of schools. So whereas the policy probably was very fully effective at the time was never revisited after we actually had students in our midst getting exposed to COVID. The school district policy is that when a person is exposed to COVID-19, they follow their healthcare team recommendations. So if a student lives with someone who has the virus and is not experiencing symptoms, the parents have a right to send them to school. To make changes to the current policy, I would recommend that the resources available at both the Mississippi State Department of Health and the CDC guidelines be the framework for building new policies and procedures. The next opportunity comes from cleaning and sanitizing the rooms. According to the school's reopening resource guide, all custodial staff will have COVID-19 sanitation certificates to keep the school clean. What is missing are the procedures in place for them to come clean the room according to their certified sanitation processes during the day when we know someone was just in there with COVID. In my experience, the teachers are the first and last line of defense in fighting the virus in their classrooms. I recommend that a change team be set up and comprised of people from each of the hierarchy organizational levels, such as the school district, administration, and faculty, and possibly maybe even some of the older students at the high school, to prepare a plan with written steps and procedures for sanitizing classrooms exposed to COVID. The change team should also formulate simple to follow step-by-step procedures for teachers when students need quarantining. Now moving on to the doing phase, once initial procedures are formulated, one school can pilot or test out the procedures for a set period of time, maybe 30 days, and report back to the change team what is working and what is not. At this point, the change team could collaborate on whether to move forward and implement these changes throughout the district, or if they first need to revisit the policies and procedures to improve them, which would warrant going back to the deciding phase. Assuming we have implemented the change initiative, we move to the discerning phase. Stakeholders have initiated the changes, and now is the time to reflect on the change initiative's challenges and successes to determine if the vision was met through the various change efforts. The evaluation should begin with what went well and what needs improving. This type of information can only be obtained by meeting once again with the change team and all the stakeholders and keeping the lines of communication open and honest. During this time, I would also recommend comparing rates of current active COVID cases to the rates before the change initiative was implemented. I chose Pasmore's complex continuous change model because during pandemic times, there are many significant changes taking place very quickly, with little or no precedence for guiding the best course of action. This truly is living in a complex, continuously changing environment. The need for change must be identified early and executed quickly to provide students and staff the safest environment possible. Pasmore's change model is well-rounded and comprehensive enough to handle many change initiatives taking place simultaneously during this pandemic era we are all currently going through. So thank you for your time and attention. Does anyone have any questions?
Kenneth has his hand up.
I can't see anything. Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, go ahead and stop sharing. That'll be good.
Okay. Whoever wants to go.
Hey, Jena. Great job, by the way. So you did a good job of summing up some of the challenges from the education standpoint, because I wanted to share with you the woes of Alabama that I think you might be able to relate to. And then I wanted to add to something that you had said, that you couldn't find any information on the chemical that was being used for sanitation. And so most recently in Alabama, and I know that I don't think anybody's doing it right, and I'm not supporting why they're not sharing any of that by any means. So I support what you just said of why are they not sharing this? Why are they communicating it this way? We recently went to a meeting on about 3 weeks ago. It was right before Christmas, so I'm going to say about 3 weeks ago. And as we came back, the Alabama Educators Association invited the state superintendent, the Association of Superintendents, the Association of School Boards, the Association of School Nurses, and the board of medical examiners together, because what we found, or what they were hearing, and it wasn't our dog in the fight, they just weren't invited the colleges to participate, was that according to our Association of School Boards, this is crazy, the school board or the superintendent or even the principal has the legal authority to override a physician's excuse, which contradicts the reason for calling a meeting of all these state agencies together in the first place. And so, you know, the superintendents won't agree with the Educators Association, the school board won't agree with those two. And so you did a great job of highlighting just the amount of just BS, absolute political BS, of no one wanting to yield any unionized position at all for the greater good. So just, you know, thanks for that. And then the material safety data sheet would be something that might be able to help. If you can get your name on that chemical, then because you're OSHA regulated, as if you have more than so many employees, you are OSHA regulated. So, you know, they do have to have somewhere the MSDS book with that chemical in it.
Well, all the bottles have to be labeled. Like it could be a homemade label, but I mean, I know that. But again, I try to. I like to fly under the radar, and I'm not a big standout in front of person. I feel like I'm like the quiet storm in the back, and so I am close to my principal, and I just haven't brought that up yet because I know that what she's going through is just insurmountable.
Well, we had here in Montgomery Public Schools, the superintendent for the system just decided each high school could do their own plan for the system. And so they had a few teachers over here in Montgomery who died, and the class didn't know that their teacher had died until she just didn't show up for class. And so that's what prompted some of these meetings. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It's awful.
It is so scary. And what's so scary is there is no person who, how is this going to affect them? You know, and my principal said, I don't want you to be a martyr. Don't put her by you. Well, I cannot in good conscience set her with the other students. Well, you're not taking her. You know, I said, will the superintendent let me do her schoolwork in his office? Because, you know, but she took my concerns to the school board or to the school meeting, and she said that they basically harassed her to stop talking about it. They weren't going to listen to her. They thought it was silly. Nothing needs to change.
Yeah, there's some deep pockets over here who still don't believe that it's existing, but I think it's because it hasn't affected anyone in their family circle yet. So,
well, thank you.
Anyway, great job though.
Thank you.
Hi, Jena.
Hi.
It's Sandra. You did a fantastic job. Look, I'm still sitting here in shock with what teachers are really dealing with. That's a lot. I mean, to come in and you have a kid who's sick with COVID, it goes all the way up to the superintendent, and they're like, we're not going to change? Really?
No, and you know what's so interesting is I was even mocked. I mean, I'm not criticizing because I do love my principal and I love where I work.
Yeah.
She even mocked me. She said, Miss Hartley, you're not a doctor. You don't know. And I said, all I know is she's not well.
Yes.
Like, I don't care if it's emotional or physical. I'm telling you, she just does not feel well. And they mocked me. And then I walked out of her office, and then we all immediately got a text that she had COVID. And I turned around and I looked at her, and she goes, I bet those parents feel bad now. And I'm like, what? No, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I don't want.
Wow.
I want us all safe.
That has to be so frustrating. Yeah, that's frustrating. That has to be very frustrating. So you're going through all those range of emotions that Bentley was talking about.
Well, and then they told me, well, now you're the COVID whisperer. I said, no, I just know my babies. I'm with them 8 hours a day.
Wow. But I love your idea about the coalition that you wanted to put together with the teachers, the change team. That could really have an impact if somebody would really listen.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Jena, this is Carlos.
Hey,
I can just give you a quick story kind of related to the change. Over the break, so my wife's a school nurse, and we were just talking like, how can we get this manner, or this attitude about the pandemic is everywhere. It seems like it's just like the people that are in leadership are as stubborn as a mule in some sense. And so we were driving, and I said, "Hey, why don't we try to do some ambassadors, get some buy-in from the people that are not in charge?" And so we came up with this idea to make these little the COVID ambassadors of the school. Like she charged the children to be uh, like a COVID ambassador. And so these kids, each teacher had to identify 2 kids in each class to put forth the policy that's coming from the CDC or from the Department of Health. And these kids, man, they took it and they just took off. And it's like they were making sure every child in the room had their mask on correctly. They were making sure that every child wiped their desk down when they left, or making sure that they were 6 feet apart when it was time for them to go to lunch, or different things like that. And so that became like this really cool deal where these kids were being identified. They had like a little, she gave them a little stethoscope,
Hmm.
uh, and they got a little pad, just to say, hey, this is something that, you know, that she empowered them, and she had buy-in from the principal. And so this is where it changed though. So you had all these kids doing it and helping out, and then this power shift became the parents figured it out at home, and a lot of parents had COVID and they were still sending their children to school and getting this crazy reaction
Well,
to.
that's my thing right there. I
Yeah.
don't think it should be a choice. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Carlos.
no, no.
But that point right there, that is not the parents don't know what's best for all the students, right?
Mhm.
They know they have to go to work, or they don't have somebody to babysit their child, or they don't have somebody to help out for that. Okay, I get what the school is saying, that if they don't have a confirmed test positive result, that they need to stay home. My position is, no, we know better, we have to do better. We know how germs are spread. We know if that child is going home, that child has already been for the last 10 days exposed to this. So therefore that child is going to carry it, whether they have symptoms, whether or not they ever get sick. They are carrying the germ back and forth every day on the bus into the classroom. And we eat in our room. We are in our room for 8 hours a day. I open the windows to get fresh air in, because my grandmother told me a long time ago that's the only way you stop from getting sick. And so, but we haven't got it in our room, and so I keep opening the windows even if it's cold out for a few minutes every day. But those
That's so
kids should
cool.
stay home. If somebody has COVID in your household, those kids should stay home.
Oh yeah,
That's my position.
yeah, yeah. It was a cool fact that she said last year she had probably 400 cases of the flu before COVID. This year she's probably had 3.
Exactly. And all of my
So
students wear their masks. They are very good about washing their hands. We sanitize before we touch the board.
yeah,
They are so good about it, and they are little troopers with it. And yes, I have noticed, just no data behind it, but I have noticed that there is far fewer sicknesses going around, and
yeah.
I don't think they should ever probably stop wearing their masks at school or stop the sanitation that we're doing. I
Hmm.
just want a few procedures in place to make it so that teachers know step by step exactly what to do, and how do we keep everybody as safe as we can keep them.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're doing that. I think the teachers are individually working very hard, but we need the school support to say, hey, you have COVID in the house. Okay, your child's going to stay home. We have everything online. We have everything in Canvas. You're good to go. Stay home.
Yeah. Yeah. I tip my hat off at you. Great job. This was hitting all kind of buttons and feelings and reactions. This is pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate everybody's support and thank you.
Hey, I just
What a
want
Hey, Gene.
as a parent, y'all's ability in K-12 to be able to flip a switch and go remote instruction at the drop of a hat is nothing short of a miracle, by the way, because, you know, I'm telling you, having had to homeschool or virtually proctor my little girl, how y'all have any hair and how you just have made it and survived with sanity intact, I don't know, because it's, yeah, so thank you.
It's funny you should say that because I tell my team teachers, y'all, I can't stress like you guys. I am too old for one, seasoned, as Jamille puts it, and my hair is not going to grow back. So I don't stress along with them, but I try to even it out a little bit, and we do a good job. We have a great team of people, and I do love what I do. It's a lot of fun. What other job can you get hugged all day long, right? And told how wonderful you are.
Awesome. That fantastic job. Let's give Jena a round. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our program this evening. We've had 3 outstanding guests and looking forward to more presentations next week. So I'm going to pull that up real quick. If I can figure it out. There it is. And we'll do it this way. We'll do it the old-fashioned way, I guess. Okay. Do. So hopefully you can see that. Next week, we're going to have Rachel and Jamaris, and they'll be talking about Carnell's change management model and the ASTD change model, respectively. So we're looking forward to that. Scheduled speakers, please upload your PowerPoints in Canvas by midnight the night before their scheduled online presentation. See if I can make this work. There you go. Upcoming discussion board, please post a reaction to John Bentley's insights about change leadership. Due dates are posted there, and I'll be updating the slides on Canvas for you. And I finished looking at the responses and the assessments for feedback for Dr. Jena, and outstanding job. Y'all did a great job on those, so I appreciate that. One more to do. Okay, we already talked about PowerPoints. And PowerPoints again, they're on just items on the calendar. Change model case study papers coming up on the 7th. That's one of our big assignments. And please don't forget, keep working on your personal change anything challenge reflection. That's coming up as well on the 7th. See if I can find my way. I found my way. Grr. Ah, nice one. All right, so now I can see everything again. Before we part, does anyone have any questions? Ready to visit the Sandman, I suppose. I know that's how it goes. Good stuff. You guys are hanging tough. You're doing a great job. I want to thank you all for your maintaining your enthusiasm and your engagement throughout. Doing great jobs on these presentations. We're learning a lot about these various models and how they can be applied. And I think what we're beginning to realize is that each one has its place and its function as far as how you might apply it in different situations. So good on you for that. And with that, I wish you all a great evening. Thanks again.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Oh.
Good night.